to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Peter Hayward, an award-winning board game designer. Peter's latest creation, Critter Kitchen, is currently on Kickstarter. Peter, welcome to the binge. How you doing, sir?
Doing very well. It's a little early in the morning for me in that it's 11 a.m. and I'm awake, but it's the joyful life of a game
I'm
designer.
like mid-afternoon, just jacked up on coffee, so I'm
Mm.
raring to go. Uh, Peter, it's good to see you. I think I first met you. It's always been in passing, like 30 seconds here and there, saying, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And we kind of bump into each other. And someone like at Origins, for instance, our mutual friend Reed Muscola introduced us. I'm pretty sure I saw you in Toronto at one point. I don't know if it was at a Produce Spiel or if it was at BreakoCon. Am I imagining this?
No, my son lives in Toronto, so I go up there as much as I can, and if I can time it around a convention, then suddenly it's a trip paid for by work for me to see my son.
Oh, perfect. So that I'm not crazy. Okay, perfect. So
No, I didn't say that. I make no promises in that regard.
So Peter, obviously, I don't throw the words prolific around loosely, but I mean, I would definitely say you're a prolific game designer. We're going to get into some of the titles as we kind of talk about your story. But I kind of want to, like in your bio, and we will have this kind of in the show notes. But I mean, you started in Australia. Can you give us a quick like snippet on how you ended up in West Coast USA?
Yeah, it's been described as the Rube Goldberg machine of immigration because I currently live in Hollywood. I'm in North Hollywood right now. That's
Yeah.
where my apartment is. And I moved here to become a screenwriter.
Mm.
But if you're at all familiar with moving to America, one does not simply walk into the US. So in order to get to America, I had to get a visa. In order to get a visa, I had to prove that I was extraordinary at something. And screenwriting, as much as I would like to think I'm extraordinary at it, it's not a thing that, you can just be like, from Australia, I'm a screenwriter now, give me a visa.
Yeah.
So that's actually why I was in Toronto in the first place. Toronto was just to
Mm.
get close to America and start building my board game portfolio, my ludography, which I have done quite successfully. And now I live in America to be a screenwriter because of board games via Toronto. It's a bit of a convoluted adventure.
Certainly, Toronto's got quite the movie industry here as well, right? Like we have obviously the Toronto Film Festival, but even many studios here and as well as Montreal. Yeah, so much a little bit in Vancouver as well, just for even movie production. So that's kind of
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of cool to see that conduit come through. How many games have you?
Suits used to be filmed on my street when
Oh,
I lived in Toronto.
oh, no
We'd go
kidding.
outside every now and again. They'd just be filming Suits.
Oh my gosh, that's a great show too. Yeah, a lot of people don't even realize that that's done in Toronto, but the odd time I'd see a building, I'd be like, wait a second, that's not in the States. I know that building. How many games have you created?
Oh, I'm so bad at the numbers. I know that Critter Kitchen, which is live now, is my 19th game that's been kickstarted.
Wow.
So it's 19 plus, but I don't actually know exactly how many. I should probably look it up someday.
Have you tallied up the funding, like how much money's been generated from your designs?
Yeah, I actually just did. So I can't speak of everything, but in terms of purely Kickstarters, I
Yeah.
think I did the math the other day, and it was 843,000 from all my Kickstarters before, and then this one, he said with fingers crossed, is poised to hit about that number. So Critter Kitchen is going to be in pure crowdfunding dollar terms as successful as every other game I've made put together.
That's crazy. And then how did you get into it? Like, where did the board game design kind of bug first hit you? Like, what made you get into board game design?
Yeah, so it's funny because it's one of those things of like once I got into it, I was like, oh yeah, this is new. But then I look back and I'm like, oh, as a kid, I had a book about making board games and I used to make them all the time. And I used to run in Canada. I don't think they're as big as they are elsewhere. But do you guys know panel shows like QI or Would I Lie to You or anything like that? It's a style of TV show that I've always been obsessed with,
Right.
where it's basically comedians on a panel making jokes, but it's all structured as games.
Mm,
And so in Australia, I used to run live panel shows,
mm.
which involved a lot of game design, but you don't think of it as game design. It's just, yeah, I'm assembling a panel show. And so I've been doing little dribs and drabs my whole life, but it didn't really coalesce until, oh man, I've gotten old. So all the years of blurring together. About a bit over a decade ago, when my friend invited me to play Twilight Imperium,
Oh
and
wow.
I played it, and I won my first ever game of Twilight Imperium, and that started me down the rabbit hole of hobby games. And then once anything I'm consuming, I want to create. So, if I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, I suddenly want to make a podcast. If I'm reading a lot of books, I suddenly want to write a book. So once I
Yeah.
started playing games, it was natural for me to start designing them. And because I have a systems brain, it's just like it works well with the way that I think.
Interesting. And what types of games, like, would you say that most of your games fall within the same kind of like weight?
Oh no, it's horribly schizophrenic. My favorite designer is Vlaada Chvátil, and while I'm nowhere near his level, I really like that the same man who made Code Names and Bunny Bunny Moose Moose also made Through the Ages and Dungeon Lords. Like
Yeah.
that's sort of how I see my career. So French Toast is a literal 5 minute party game. And then a game I'm working on at the moment called Providence is a 3 hour heavy dry Euro.
Oh,
So
wow.
like really the whole range. The stuff I think I'm sort of best known for, have had the most success, is stuff that sort of plays with the way that you think about games a little bit, which is maybe a little cocky, but it's like I live in this weird space. Like so I don't know if you've heard of my game Fiction, but it's kind of like Wordle with a lie. So you're trying to solve a Wordle, but the person who's setting the Wordle, their clues can't be trusted. So you're kind of solving a logic puzzle, you're kind of playing the other person, you're trying to solve words. It's just a little bit of everything.
Where do you draw your inspiration for these games?
I play a lot of games.
Just
I mean,
playing.
that's the obvious answer. But I'll play a game and then something will get in my head, and I'll be like, oh, what if this? And then I'll lose 3 days and kind of sort of stagger out of my room with a finished game, finished in the loosest sense, of course. Months of development after that. But yeah, once an idea gets in my head and starts spinning and spinning and spinning, it's like entering a fugue state and coming out with a design.
Is it design, or is it like, and I've asked this of many people, of um what comes first, kind of the theme or the mechanics?
So I'm the reductive way to say it is I am definitely mechanics first,
Yeah.
but I've been thinking about this a lot because, as I mentioned, I'm also a screenwriter and I do various other creative stuff. And I've been thinking about this specifically, and I think all of my ideas come from tension, which is mechanic slash a little bit atmosphere. But like, if there's a central tension, once I have that, that's the thing that kind of gets stuck in my head.
Hmm.
So all my games are tension first, if that answers the question even
Yeah.
slightly.
And then is it like, how many kind of like, kind of scrapping the piece of paper, tossing it trash can, and going back to the drawing board, you go through as you're
Oh,
doing your design, or do you
infinite.
find you kind of hit like a flow, and it kind of takes you on a speed path to that finish line?
My co-designers sometimes get annoyed at me about this, but I'm very come up with an idea. If it doesn't work, throw it out. Come up with an idea. If it doesn't work, throw it out. And I spent the first 7 years of my career not doing that. So I'd be like, no, this idea will work if I just beat my head against the wall for long enough. And the games that have had the most success are the ones that worked within the first three drafts. If it's not working within three drafts these days, I throw it out. And that's not to say that it could never work, but I'm generating a lot of ideas. The kind of the stats are roughly, I'll come up with 100 ideas, 10 of them are worth prototyping, one of them is worth proceeding with.
Mm,
So it's a 1% hit rate in that sense. But I've definitely learned that if it's working fast, then the whole process will be easier and the game at the end will be better. It's like if you were trying to build the tallest tower and you started in a valley versus starting on a hill. If
yeah,
the
that's
moment
fair.
that I know I'm on a hill, I'm like, cool, this is the tower that I want to focus on. Whereas, you can do it from a valley, but it's just going to be so much more work to not only get to where the hill started, but to like get to ground level.
And the question that I see going around, even lately, there's been a lot of social media accounts where people are focusing on. It seems like the same thing that keeps cycling through. Like every month, somebody's talking about it. But this whole idea of self-publish versus just design, and people saying, should you self-publish, or should you just try to get somebody to sign your game? Um, Easier to say, I think, once you are in a position where you're, again, for lack of a better word, prolific, where you've probably have people approaching you now saying, hey, I need a game. I want one of your games. What do you got? Right. Versus
Right,
maybe
right.
when you started and you're creating games. Did you ever go through that decision process for you? Like,
Yeah, so I'm also a publisher. So Jelly Bean Games
yeah.
is where probably about 10 to 10 to 15 of my published games come from. So I definitely self-published a lot. The question for me is not, whether you should, as if there's a definitively correct answer, but it's
Yeah.
what are your goals? So for me, to get my visa for America, I needed to be running a company. That was a vital necessity. So
Mm.
it was not really a question of like, should I self-publish? It was like, okay, can I make a sustainable business that will get me into the country? Now, most people aren't designing games to immigrate. That's not a common motivator. But so for me, that question was sort of answered. And then I'm very much there's a quote that I sometimes talk about, which is, every artist has 10,000 bad drawings clogging up their hand, and you need to get them out so that the good ideas can flow. So
Yeah.
I'm I'm proud of making a lot of my early games, but I don't pull them out and be like, look at this thing that I made
Hmm.
in the same way as I do my more recent stuff. And so for me, I needed to publish a bunch of stuff before I was like, oh, this is how the market works. This is how a game works. This is how publishing factors into various things. So for me, it was incredibly valuable, but I wasn't doing it purely for the games. I was also doing it because I had a side quest that games
Sure.
were helping me on.
So how do you make that decision then, even now? So you have your own publishing company and you've got companies that you're making games for. How do you make the decision on this game is going to go to someone else, or this is one I'm going to self-publish?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I have so many games is because I tend to design to a publisher. Now that doesn't mean that publisher publishes it, but when I'm thinking about like what could this game be, I'll
Hmm.
think, okay, well, where would it fit in the market? Which publisher would make the most sense? And then it helps a lot with the decisions along the way. So, designing a game is 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 micro decisions. And having a publisher in mind helps guide that. So
Mm.
sometimes I'll be like, look, I think this would be a really good Jelly Bean game. And then I'm like, okay, well, now I know that we're going to do it through Kickstarter because we're a Kickstarter based company, that we want to hit a certain price point, that our audience likes this kind of thing. I know that I can build the Kickstarter page like this. I know that maybe I can work with this specific artist. Like, I really can think, oh, okay, if this is going to be a Jelly Bean game, then I know a lot of the things kind of going in, and that helps the decision making process. Sometimes I'll be like, this makes no sense as a Jelly Bean game. Like, this is a really fun idea. But for my audience, they would be like, what are you doing? This is not what we come to you for.
Just off
So I
brand.
work a lot with All Play.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I work a lot with, they used to be boardgametables.com. Now they're All Play. I work with them. And so they have exactly two box sizes and exactly two price points. And that really helps streamline the decision making process. Because the first question is this a $20 game or a $40 game? It's a $20 game. Cool. Well, that really limits what components can go in the box. That limits the footprint of it. And if it's $40 game, that's different. Or someone like Cardboard Alchemy, they are again a Kickstarter based company, but they want to hit all the stretch goals in the world, which we'll talk about in a moment. But it really changes what you're thinking about, where you're sort of putting the limitations of what the game can be. And not to say like, limitations aren't an inherently bad thing. If I know it's a $20 game, I'm not going to be like, cool, this needs a 3-foot board and 200 custom dice. It can't do that. I like designing within those constraints. I have half a dozen games with Button Shy, either out or coming out soon, and they only do games that are exactly 18 cards.
Mm.
So it's such an inspiring limitation. So for me, it's just, what destination makes sense for the game, and then I will work towards that destination.
That's cool. Like I was thinking of when I was going through kind of your back catalog. Village Pillage is the one that was mentioned right in your bio, and I mean it did very well. Um, I just literally played that the other day. I had no
Oh,
idea it was
really?
your game. Yeah, I was played at a game night. I had a colleague bring it, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to play? Have you ever played Village Pillage?" I'm like, "No." And so we sat down and played. I'm like, "That was a really cool game." Then I'm
And you
reading your
still had me on
bio.
the
I'm like,
show.
"Holy crap,
That's
that's
very
Peter's
generous
game."
of you.
Yeah, yeah, it was cool. So a game like Critter Kitchen then, was that one where you had kind of that concept flushed out, or did you say no, I'm going to go to Cardboard Alchemy, I'm going to make a game for them following up the kind of the whole Flamecraft vibe? Like what was kind of the decision process there?
So amusingly, Cardboard Alchemy was not the publisher we had in mind. I
Oh.
mentioned that it doesn't always go to the publisher. It's still useful even if, like, for example, CGE is my favorite game company. I don't think I'm ever going to get a game signed with them. That would be the dream.
Mm.
But if you're designing towards CGE, they have such a strong position in the market. They know what they're doing. It means that in a sense you are designing to the market. Not in a sell your soul kind of way, but in a like, this is a game that will have an audience and make sense. And so
Yeah.
even if CGE don't go for it, other publishers will be like, hey, this game has an audience. This game makes sense. So it opens up your options instead of limiting them. So the publisher we had in mind for Critic Kitchen, my co-designer Alex and I, was actually Kids Table Board Games, which
Mm.
is run by Helena Capel
Yep.
in Toronto. They published another one of my games, Bugs on Rugs. Working with them was one of my absolute dream experiences, like one of the most pleasant publishing experiences I've ever had in my life. And they just had creature comforts. And so we thought, you know what, this game with a cute critter theme, this would work really well with Helena. It would fit their box size, it would hit their market. And so we actually pitched it to them. And Helena, this is the best rejection I've ever gotten. She said, look, my staff have been raving about this game. I don't want to play it because we are so booked up. And I think I would like this game so much, I would bump something. And I can't do that to my other designers. So I'm going to pass before even seeing it because I think I'll like it too much. And we were like, you know what, Helena, if that's how you're going to reject us, you can reject us all day long. That's
Oh, that's amazing.
uh, and so we ended up, I pitched it to All Play and they were interested, and we pitched it to Cardboard Alchemy because Peter Vaughan is in LA with me.
Yeah.
So I see him all the time at game events. And he said, look, we really want this. We think we can get Sandara on. And obviously, as he said, Flamecraft had been a big hit. And part of the pitch that we had was we hadn't designed all the bonus content yet, but he knew that we could. And he said, look, if I want this, I want a lot of bonus content. And as a designer, that's the that's the most generous thing a publisher can say. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we like your game so much, we want a lot more of it. So Alex and I have gone bananas just designing oodles and oodles of content. And then they've if you have a look at the Kickstarter, there's so much on there.
Oh, we're gonna look at the
That's
Kickstarter in a
about a
second. Yeah.
yeah, that's about a third of what we designed. Like we really, there's a show called Arrested Development, and when they
Yeah.
were writing that show, they tried to write so many jokes that they weren't just cutting the bad jokes, they weren't just cutting the good jokes. They had to cut great jokes to fit everything in,
Mhm.
which is sort of what Alex and I were like. You know what? Let's do that. So when it came to publishing, Peter was like, cool, we need X number of restaurateurs or X number of sous chefs. We're like, here's this many that we are super proud of. You can pick any selection of these and we'll be happy. And he was just, overflowing with options and able to then make the decisions not based on like, oh, we have 6 and we need 6. Cool, these are the 6 that we're doing. But like, we need 6 and we have 20. Well, which ones will make the best, will fit the budget best, or make the best Kickstarter presentation, or will connect with our fans best? So we have oodles of content as a result of working with Cardboard Alchemy.
When you create this game to pitch, how polished was, like, clearly they redo the artwork with, in the
Yeah.
style of same artist as Flamecraft, but how polished was kind of the visuals that you in terms of pitching? So just for other people as they're creating games to maybe pitch to
Yeah.
publishers, how far along do you take that?
I would describe it as rough but tonally consistent. So
Okay.
if you actually have a look on Board Game Geek, I've been doing a series of designer diaries, and it's got a lot of images of early prototypes, and they're not, Sandara's art is an 11. These are a 4,
Yeah.
but they're a consistent 4, and like we wanted to sell like the cozy aspect and the cute critters and the like cartooniness of it. And this is before Sandara was even remotely on board.
Mhm.
So we knew the tone that we wanted and the feel that we wanted. And then we designed, we prototyped to that. So we made sure that everything was really clean and really friendly and really colorful, but not like, I'm not an artist. Alex is a
Yeah.
much better artist than I am, and still not a professional visual artist by any means. So it was a lot of, scrounging stuff and sticky taping it together. What do you guys say? Duct taping it together. But it's not about quality, it's about tone, if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And I mean, we often talk about this in the podcast with other designers and publishers of, how far do you take that prototype before you start pitching it? I'm always a fan of try to make it look as visually. I mean, I had this conversation with someone literally just yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, and they're saying, well, how kind of final does it have to be? And I said, understanding it's going to be completely redesigned and skinned by the
Yeah.
publisher that takes it. But it really helps if you can theme it and have it looking somewhat like an actual game so that they can see it and they can also now visualize, okay, I can see where I can take this, where it's much tougher to do that when you have like pieces of paper and, scotch tape and, hand-drawn things, right? So the more
Yeah,
polished you can
exactly.
make it, and there's ways to do that with like Game Crafter or print to play and things like this, right? So I don't know, what's your
I'll,
perspective on
I'll I'll tell you, the copy of Critic Kitchen that Cardboard Alchemy took still had handwriting on it.
that?
So
Okay.
again, it's not like we went to GameCraft and did a full anything. There's challenges throughout the game, and we literally changed those values like a week before pitching
Mm,
it. And I was traveling a bunch. I didn't want to reprint them, and I knew that the publisher wouldn't be like, "Well, hang on a second. 90% of this is not handwritten, but this 10% is this is a disaster. You don't know what
Yeah.
they're doing. We end up changing those numbers so much throughout the testing process
Yeah.
anyway that it didn't matter. But as long as it's clear and clean. So I definitely I spend a lot of time thinking about how to present information in a
Mm,
game. That's really important to me. So fiction, actually, the game I was talking about, the Wordle type one, that one has a little sheet for the Wordle character, and that was just black circles on a white thing. But I knew the layout that I wanted, and the final layout doesn't. It's funny if you're an amateur, you look at that and be like, that's totally different. They did squares and you did circles, but in terms of layout, it's almost identical. Like they really
yeah.
took what I did and then, oh yeah, this is the most logical layout. One thing that I did for fiction in particular is the you needed a word list for the person to choose from, because if you make someone come up with their own word, it doesn't work. And so I printed out words, little cards that looked like a page from a book on the front and had a book cover on the back. And it's little stuff like that. It makes no mechanical difference. But when you're like, I need to pick a word, and you pick up Moby Dick and pick a word from Moby Dick, it feels like you're feels close to the published product. The closer you can make it look like a published product, I think, to your point, the less work you're making the publisher do to imagine it. Like they don't have
Yeah.
to take it and be like, cool, well, we've got a spreadsheet here. How can we make this into a game? You're saying, look, it's ugly. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not a
Yeah.
visual artist, but it looks like the game will look.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think tonal is a good way to kind of to kind of theme what you're saying there. So with Critter Kitchen, so where did the idea of this germinate from? And I'm going to show on the screen for people that are watching either live or on the replay. First and foremost, let me just hit this right at the beginning: is that you guys are currently at I'm going to put this in Canadian dollars because it's the only way I can see it. But you're at $902,000,
Oh, wow. That sounds so much better in Canadian dollars.
8,332 backers, still 6 days to go. As everybody knows, the last 48 hours, there's a hockey stick, right? So you just see
Yeah.
your pledges jump up. So for sure, this will hit 1 million Canadian. It'll be interesting to see where it lands in US dollars, but congratulations on that right out of the gate, because I mean, that's huge, huge.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
It's been a lot of fun. It's been terrifying to watch them work. They're so good at what they do.
that's fair. So what would you say would be where the idea first germinated for this?
So the line I often use is that I really love working with Alex because he comes up with all the ideas and I make all the money. It's great. It's a perfect partnership. Critter Kitchen was very much his idea originally. He had this idea. The core of Critter Kitchen is that you have a little chef that goes fast that carries one thing, a medium chef that goes medium speed and carries two things, and a large chef that goes slowly and carries three
Yeah.
things. And this idea of of not even, it wasn't even fast, medium, and slow in his. It was kind of like cat and mouse. Like you'd have a cat that chases away the mouse, or you'd have a mouse. That was the original idea. He said that, and I was immediately like, I know how to do that as a worker placement game. And he was like, okay, let's work on that. And we spent probably a year, 18 months, somewhere like that. Again, it's all in my design diaries. I haven't thought about it since I wrote it down. Working on a massive, convoluted, heavy Vlada Euro level game that just collapsed under its own weight every time we played
Oh
it.
wow.
And then on the way home from Unpub, we were driving from Unpub to his house in Raleigh, where he lives. I was like, hey, let's throw that out. Let's just throw out this is what I was saying. I'm a big fan of throwing stuff out. I was like, throw it all out. Let's just make something around that idea that's much, much simpler. And in that car ride, I came up with the idea of the carrying 1, 2, 3, which is the second half of the idea that makes it work.
Mhm.
And then in that car ride, we've designed 80% of the final game. Like we got home, prototyped it. If you played that version and played the final game, you'd be like, yeah, this is the same game, just much, much better. Like, but the core was in a 3-hour car drive. We came up with all of it and then just prototyped and prototyped and prototyped. And then we actually signed that 3 weeks after the car drive. That is not standard.
Yeah.
That is hugely atypical. But because we'd worked on a worse version of it for a year and a half, it came together really quickly.
Yeah, it's interesting when you can do that sometimes. Like, I hate to say walk away from something and come back to it. When you're doing is the number of game designs, you're probably doing it simultaneously at the same time. I mean, I'm sure it's kind of an analogy of that, right? Where you can kind of go and work on another game, then come back and say, okay, it still isn't
Right.
working. And this idea of being able to say, okay, let's rebuild up from scratch or from the ground level. It sounds like you kind of hit this creative flow at that point where you kind of
Yeah.
got on a train and just started charging towards that end, right?
I don't know where I heard this term, but I think a lot of the world in terms of scarcity mode and abundance mode.
Okay.
Scarcity mode is when you're fearful of things leaving, so you grip them so tight. And abundance mode is when you're like, look, James, in a few minutes, I got to go, but that's okay. We'll talk again. Like, I don't need to stay on this call because I'll never see you
Yeah,
again. And abundance mode as a creative is so valuable. It's one of the reasons I love working with Alex is that he's going to come up with as many ideas as I am. And the first one we came up with is very unlikely to be the best idea. Like, let's throw that out, come up with 10 more. One of those is probably statistically going to be better. And if not, we can come up with 10 more. And so the ability to just let go, like neither of us were like, no, we've worked on this for a year and a half. Alex is also a professional game.
sure.
He works in the industry as well. He's Pandasaurus's developer and scout. And so neither of us were, squeezing the life out of the thing in our desperation to keep it. We let it go. And that openness, that abundance mode allowed a much, much, much stronger game to replace it.
That's a great way of saying it. The so Critter Kitchen. Let's I got on the screen here for those who are again either watching on the replay or live. Can you tell us kind of the essence of how so you got this fast, medium, slow kind of mechanic? Can you give us an kind of just start at the beginning of kind of what is the theme of this game and kind of the essence of how you play?
So you are running a restaurant in the lovely town of Bistro Bay. You are a critter. Everyone's a critter. It's a world of critters. Sendar has brought this world to life so beautifully. And it is restaurant week. At the end of the week, a critic is coming, and you want to impress them with the fanciest meal. In the meantime, you're also selling to your normal patrons during this restaurant week. So a bunch of challenges will come up, like the ultimate melt or tasty tapas. And so you're sending your zoo chefs out to collect ingredients at the market. So if you've ever seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, that's where this came from.
Yep.
The chefs not only cook the meals, they'll go out and buy the food because that's how you get the best meals is by buying the best food. So there's 7 different ingredients and they have numbers ranging from 2 to 7. That's the quality of the food. So you might send your guy out to get the best cut of fish and the best cut of meat and the best wine and the best carrots and the best cheese, with the intent of either putting them together to serve these challenges or saving your best ingredients for the end of the game when the critic comes by. So it's a very simple game loop, which is allocate your 3 chefs, prioritize the stuff that you want, maybe scoop up a bunch of stuff that is less valuable, but you get more of it so you can serve that in the challenges and serve these challenges. And at the end of the week, the critic is going to every restaurant. So he only takes 1 bite out of every single dish that you serve. So you can only serve the critic one thing, your best carrot, your best mushroom, your best wine, and they will assess you based on that. And you get stars for everything. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that makes it really exciting is that there's a lot of variable content, which is my jam. I love variable
Yeah.
content. So I mentioned the critics coming to town. We have a big deck of critics, and each of them adds a game-changing rule.
Mm.
So the kangaroo is the one that people get most excited about, which is all the 6s in the game are now 9s because it's upside down because they're from Australia. Or we have the tree shrew. There's spice in the game, which normally doubles an ingredient. With the tree shrews out, it triples it. And then there's some wild ones like we just unlocked the cow on the Kickstarter. The cow has 4 stomachs. So instead of just serving one of your best, you can choose one course and serve 4 of your best ingredients. That massively changes the way that you play the game.
As I'm scrolling over this page, like it is like an onslaught of sensory overload on my eyeballs. Like there's so much stuff. Is this just so I'm clear, because I have it kind of squeezed to fit the TikTok frame here. All this extra stuff, is that the deluxe or are these add-ons on top of the deluxe?
What's an example of an extra thing you're talking
Oh,
about?
there's like there's trays involved, there's the bag, there's metal coins, there's metal stars, there's
Okay, so the base game. Okay, so I don't know how they're doing this, frankly. I'm also a publisher and I'm bewildered.
yeah.
The base game is huge. The base game is the same size as Flamecraft. They're selling that for $40
Wow.
with a free expansion, which is about half the size again. So for $40, you're already getting like more game than most $100 Kickstarters will give you. It's nuts.
Yeah.
At $80, you get the deluxe version, which just upgrades all the components. So now all the chefs that you can recruit are meeples. The stars are made of metal. The coins are metal coins now. Like everything is upgraded. And then they have this is the most ridiculous thing. They have a $160 pledge, which is a bunch of critter themed merchandise.
Okay.
So you can get like oven gloves, and you can get tea towels, and you can get a tote bag. So $40 will get you so much by itself. If you want the deluxe version, $80, and if you just want to fill your kitchen with all things critter related, the $160 pledge.
Wow. Yeah,
It's
it
bananas.
is it is like deluxe is probably not the right word for it. Like I would say
Yeah.
like premium, is that a a strong enough
Yeah,
word. I
it's
don't know. Like
like
there's
premium deluxe plus triple.
yeah, exactly. Like there's so much stuff, and like the page just stops scrolling because the page doesn't stop scrolling. It goes in on infinitely. Apparently, it just it just keeps
Yeah.
going and going and going.
They've done an incredible job. Every day they're just adding new sections. They're like, "Hey, we want to talk more about the game's world. We've got a lore section
Yeah,
now." And I'm just like, "What? Wow!" Like it's such a labor of
a
love for them. It's,
gazillion
again, it's amazing to watch them work.
different like stretch goals that have been unlocked, and
Yeah,
wow, that's crazy. So after this, so this is now, I'm sure, a very exciting moment for you to kind of see, you know, it's not confirmation of the work you've done because obviously you've accomplished quite a bit. But when you start seeing designs hit this kind of level, um, like how does it make you feel? Like is it kind of like
happy.
happy, obviously, but is it like a like I don't know how, like how do you I don't even know what the motions are to describe something like that if I had a design that hit this kind of level.
It's been overwhelming. It's been so much. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Like fun is such a strange word for it, but the lovely thing about this is that they've put out the Tabletopia and TTS versions, and we're getting a huge conversion rate from that. So it's a lot of people being like, I'm not sure about this. Let me play it. Oh, I need to have this game. Like we
Yeah.
have people in the Cardboard Alchemy Discord who are just playing it every day because like this game, I'm so proud of it. I think Alex and I have created something that's really interesting and like adjacent. Like I said earlier, like my designs kind of are often adjacent to what's out there,
Yeah.
and it's connecting with people. And obviously, Sendara's art is a huge selling point. But I think that when this game ships next year, people will be delighted. So it's just been really lovely. I don't expect every game to be successful. It's impossible for every game to be this successful.
Yeah.
Uh, I just like making stuff.
It's like telling any artist, okay, now just create another number one hit, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah. Cool, done. It's been very gratifying to see, like, Alex and I have been building up our portfolios and seeing it kind of pay off like this, and it opens doors and stuff like that. I got some other cool stuff coming out. I work, like I said, with Button Shy. They're making a little 18 card game, which is a movie. I think it's the first ever cooperative trivia
mhm.
game. It's like a movie trivia game, but it's cooperative and you can play it solo. It's called Apropos of Movies. Apropos of Movies, and that one's coming out
Is that
soon.
what
I got
Jelly
something
Bean
from
or
Allplay coming
who's publishing that one?
out. Button
Okay,
Shy, Button
Bunchai,
Shy
yep.
Games. And then Allplay, I've got a lovely relationship with Allplay where they are in with Barnes and Noble, and they're like, "Cool, every year we're going to bring you another Peter design for you to publish exclusively." And Barnes and Noble like, "Great, we love this because fiction's been doing really, really well for Barnes and Noble, so we have a very symbiotic relationship happening with the three of us right now." So I've got a game coming out called Things in Rings, which is sort of like it started as a Zendo. I don't know if you know the old game Zendo.
Okay.
Like I was trying to make family weight Zendo, and it turned into this Dr. Zeus Venn diagram game, um, which is really tickling a lot of people. We're really excited about that one.
Wow. And then I'm sure you've got tons of leftover time to work on some other stuff, right?
Yeah, what is sleep? Question mark. That's
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
an optional.
Well,
That's
Pete,
if I had the deluxe version of life, I'd have time for sleep, but I only bought the basic level.
so for anybody that does want to check out Critter Kitchen, I'm going to put a link in the show notes. Clearly, you can
Yeah.
find just by search on Kickstarter. I mean, it's literally everywhere. Or open up your Facebook. You're seeing ads everywhere on this game, right? So if you haven't heard of Critter Kitchen, then you're just not on, obviously, on the internet. But I am,
Welcome out from the rock.
yeah. So I'm going to
You'll
put a
like it
link
out
in the
here.
show notes as well. Peter, I want to wish you all the best. I can't wait to see where this thing's ending, and I'll be looking out for your next designs, and hopefully get you back on the podcast for your next game.
Oh, thanks so much, James. This is a real
No worries,
pleasure.
my friend. You take care. Cheers.
Cheers.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.